My name is Danny Box, and I'm the pastor at Hill Country Bible Church, Pflugerville, one of the churches that Harlan helped to establish and plant. And I don't really know a whole lot more to add to what you've heard, except that same song, second verse. It could be better, but it's going to be worse. No, basically, he did over and over again some really great things in helping young men learn how to pastor and how to plant churches. And I just want to say that if I had to describe Harlan in just a couple of words, I would say that Harlan was the kind of a leader that was a game changer. He was a guy that you would love on your team because he loved to come alongside people where God had given vision and dream, and he would come alongside and just push you to make it happen. He would come alongside and help you implement. He would come alongside and say, okay, now if that's going to happen, you're going to have to do this and this and this, and really push you to execute on a plan to accomplish the dream. And, sometimes that was annoying. Harlan, he was a game changer, but he was a guy who would really press you. He helped you be better than you ever would by yourself. Before we planted the church in Pflugerville, year 2000, I was on staff at Northwest with Tim Hawks and for 10 years. And I remember in the early 90s when Harlan came on board, because we were small and Tim and I it was just he and I on staff, and we officed just across the hall from each other. And it seemed like every once in a while we'd come out of our office about the same time, and we'd exchange a couple of words, and then we'd go back, in our office. And I remember one time he came out and he was talking about Harlan. He said, that guy is gonna change everything. I just don't remember the exact words, but it was to that effect. Tim just felt like, okay, this guy is gonna help us in a way I could never imagine. It was something pretty dramatic like that. And I didn't know him all that well. He worked, with the elder board, and I was doing student ministry. But I remember early on Tim saying that, and later I would discover that personally when Pflugerville was planted. But my impression that I know many of you at Hill Country Northwest will remember is that Harlan really gave us a picture of what this term that we talk a lot about, this incarnational living, this idea out of 1 Corinthians 11, follow me as I follow Christ, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And I remember the very first campaign that Hill Country did. It was just Hill Country Bible Church at that time, right? No other churches. And they were starting to raise money for land and building. And I'm at risk here because, we've got the whole archives that you can come back and see if I have the story straight. But I think it was the first campaign, and we didn't really know what we were doing. And we were trying to raise money, and there was a point when Harlan and Vonda got up with great humility to just share what God had laid on their heart to do. And it was during that time, I think it was the first campaign. I don't know. Doug, do you remember that? Is that first campaign? I don't know. But second campaign, of course. Second campaign. And so they get up and they basically share that God laid on their heart to sell their motorcycles, which next to each other were the loves of their life. Big old Honda Roadster kind of things. I don't know my motorcycles, but huge things. And just the DVD gives you an idea of how much they love these bikes. And I remember not only personally, but hearing from person after person after person saying, oh man, I've got to rethink this whole giving idea. This changes everything. It was a huge, huge moment in the life of our church. I remember when he came to plant Pflugerville, and he'd spent some time in Georgetown, and now he was coming to help us, and he was just great. But we'd sit down with each other. I can't tell you how many times at IHOP having breakfast with Harlan, and Harlan would just kind of talk to you directly about okay, well, what about this, and what about this, and what are we going to do about this? And because that was kind of the leader that he was. And Rodney, you can relate to that, can't you, Rodney? You can remember. Well Harlan would come across that way, and of course he would just really help you. I mean, I just cannot say enough that how he helped you do the things that you needed to do in order to do what you really wanted to do. You know, like some of you guys have heard the old Tom Landry quote, you know, when they ask him about coaching. It's helping 62 men do what they don't want to do in order to be who they really want to be. And that was Harlan. He would just kind of sit down with you, and he would just push you to do what you needed to do in order to see happen what you dream about doing together. I remember our men that formed our first elder board, and I see them, I think all of them out here. We'd sit around this table. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. None of us had been an elder before. And so all of a sudden we find ourselves 5 men, one of those me and Harlan. We're sitting around, we're trying to make decisions as a church. And, and I can remember when a decision would come up and everybody would just kind of hem and haw, just kind of, And everybody's just kind of looking, waiting for Harlan to say something. And Harlan would say, I think we ought to do this. Everybody would go, man, that's right what I was thinking. Roger Olmsted, you were the worst. Bill Watson, Michael Nell, you guys, you're sitting in there. Everybody's just playing their cards, holding their cards tight till Harlan said something. Of course, he got onto that pretty quick and said, that's not happening anymore. He taught us how to do things. I'll tell you one funny thing, and Harlan, he basically gave so much time. It was like having a full-time administrative pastor, operations guy, who he would go and he'd check out a place where we could meet as a church, and he would go meet with them and kind of negotiate the whole deal, and he'd come back and say, now we just need to go meet them, and Danny, you just need to say some things about, kind of tell them our vision a little bit. He had already kind of negotiate the whole deal, and he would bring me and tell me what to say, and sit me down in front of, this principal at this school, and later a guy named Dennis over at Windermere Center, and he'd work out all these details. He was so helpful in what he did. One time he sat in my office and he said, Danny, I just noticed that in the bathroom back there was no soap. No soap? Well, I think I know where some is. I can get that for you. And he said, Danny, have you considered what that communicates when people come in and they go in the bathroom and there's no soap? And I said, I didn't say what I was thinking, I'll tell you that. But he would, at every level of church implementation, push it to be really good. The last deal I'll just say really quick is that there was a church Harlan and there was a Vonda Harlan. There was a church Harlan where he's pressing you to be better. And then there was the Vonda Harlan. There was the Vonda Harlan. Thank you. It was completely different. It was like a lot of these pictures you just saw. Relaxed, fun, the big teaser. All the pastors sometimes would say to their wives, yeah, man, I got beat up by Harlan today. And they go, Harlan? That lovable teddy bear Harlan? He was so fun. I remember Kathy and I, and Vonda, do you remember when you and Harlan and Kathy and I went to San Diego, this church plant conference, and we're in the airport, and we're laughing and cutting up because that was Harlan, and we miss our flight. I think that was you and Kathy, primarily. Harlan and I think we're doing Bible studies, memory verses. You and Kathy were, I don't know. We miss our flight, but we go out to San Diego for this church plant conference. It was incredible. We laughed and cut up, and I think we did learn a couple of things, but we really had a good time. And just as others have said, so hospitable, and you two together, so loving. And he was crazy about you, and he was crazy about you, Steve, Teresa. He was crazy about Dave. He was crazy about Kathy, all the grandkids. He talked a lot about you guys. I'll just say so much more we could say, but as far as the retirement party, Harlan's not getting his gold watch. He's getting his gold crown. He's got many to have. And one day we'll see him again and all of that, and we'll look forward to it.